Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode where we continue with our brother into his life as a pastor who served under his senior pastor, where he was revealing to us the things they used to do to keep the members stuck and under control. If you are new here, this is Dangerous African Confessions HD, where we bring to you confession stories to help you make your own informed decisions about your walk with God and to help you live a purposeful life. Without taking much of your time, let us go and listen to the story. Please subscribe if you haven't done so, and also do like and share this video, so others out there can also benefit from this conversation, and hit the notification bell as well, so you will be notified anytime we upload videos.
The truth is that it wasn't just about sermons, though. The pastor also knew how to manipulate people with displays of spiritual power. He would often perform what seemed like miraculous healings, prophecies, and spiritual encounters, designed to awe the congregation and convince them of his authority. He would claim to have received a divine word from God, sometimes speaking in tongues, other times with an air of mystery that suggested he was in direct contact with the heavenly realm. I remember one particular day when the senior pastor called a woman up to the front. She had been struggling with a chronic illness for years. He asked her to step forward, declaring that God had shown him she would be healed that very day. The crowd fell silent as he prayed over her, his voice filled with conviction. Moments later, she began to shout that she felt healed, that the pain had disappeared. The congregation erupted in applause. My brother, I later found out from himself that the woman had been instructed beforehand to say she had been healed. The senior pastor had orchestrated the entire event, carefully crafting the story to fit his agenda. And just like that, he had solidified his reputation as a man of great spiritual power. The testimonies that followed were carefully curated to give the appearance that miracles were happening regularly. The congregation, of course, believed it. They saw the miracles as a sign of divine approval, and they gave more time, more money, more trust. They were hooked. As I began to learn more about the workings of ministry under the senior pastor's tutelage, I quickly realized that it wasn't just about what was preached from the pulpit. It was also about what wasn't being said, about the subtle forces at play in the background. Again, the second of the 4 lessons I learned from him was one I had never expected to encounter. This was how to use fear, particularly the fear of spiritual warfare, to control the congregation and to keep them bound to the church. At first, I thought I had misunderstood when the senior pastor mentioned spiritual warfare in passing. I had heard of it before in seminary, but it seemed more like a metaphorical concept, something for spiritual growth, a struggle against sin and temptation. But his perspective on spiritual warfare was far darker, far more manipulative than I could ever imagine. He explained it to me in quiet, careful terms. He told me that people don't know how dangerous the world is. There are forces at work in this world, evil forces, forces that want to destroy them, destroy you, destroy everything you hold dear. And only we, in this place, can protect them. I wasn't sure what he meant at the time. It sounded dramatic, almost exaggerated. But then, he showed me how it was done, how fear could be wielded like a weapon, how it could be used to control hearts, minds, and wallets. It began with subtle suggestions, tiny seeds of doubt sown in the hearts of the congregation. This is what they call the invisible enemy. My senior pastor started incorporating more and more references to spiritual warfare in his sermons. But it wasn't just about the standard teachings we all heard about resisting temptation and the struggle between good and evil. No, he spoke of the active forces of evil in the world, dark, malevolent entities that were constantly watching, waiting for the chance to destroy the lives of the faithful. Yes, that is also one of the ways they manipulate the members. They go like, every time you step out of this church, you're stepping into enemy territory. The devil is out there, watching you, plotting against you. He wants to destroy your family, your finances, your health. He will use every means possible to attack you. You see, my brother, when something like this is spoken to you over and over again, you automatically begin to have at the back of your mind that your only safe place is the church. And yes, I watched as the congregation began to react to his words. Some began to pray louder, more fervently. The fear was palpable. What he was doing, I now realize, was creating the invisible enemy, a constant, ever-present threat that could only be fought with the right weapons, the right protection. And that protection, he said, could only come through the church, through his leadership, through the sacrifices they made to God. And those sacrifices normally become money. And the monies are always taken by the pastors. So, they create these things in your mind, and then makes you push far more than your reach to sacrifice more in an attempt to somehow buy God's protection with your money. Which I can say here, based on what I have learnt over the years, it is all but lies. Another thing they also use, my brother, is what I call the fear of demons, spiritual deliverance and protection. You see, once the groundwork of fear had been laid, they moved to the next phase, which is deliverance. But I must say that deliverance, in their word, wasn't just a term for spiritual healing as you know it. Even though they will pretend it is so, they make it look like an ongoing battle. It wasn't just about expelling demons, it was about making people believe they were under constant attack, that the forces of darkness were always lurking, waiting for their chance. You see, everywhere I accompanied him to, either in the country or outside the country, the churches that we went to all operate in the same manner and style. It is like a blueprint that they all use. He taught me the art of recognizing signs of spiritual oppression, an unexpected financial loss, an unexplained illness, marital problems, or even a feeling of overwhelming sadness. All of these, he explained, could be symptoms of demonic influence. It didn't matter if the person had been going through a rough time or if they were struggling with mental health issues. If they were suffering, it was because the enemy had them in its grip. He would hold deliverance services regularly, claiming to cast out demons from the afflicted. But what I began to notice was that these deliverances were far from genuine. It wasn't about healing or freedom, it was about keeping people in a state of spiritual panic, a state of fear that could only be alleviated through ongoing submission to the church and its demands. People would rush forward, desperate to rid themselves of the darkness they had been told was plaguing them. They believed that the demons were responsible for everything: poor health, financial problems, broken relationships. And the only way to be freed from them, they were told, was to undergo deliverance. People would fall to the ground, convulsing or shouting, while the senior pastor and the other pastors like myself would pray over them, laying hands, shouting prayers, and declaring that demons were being expelled. But what was really happening was something far more sinister. In these churches, it wasn't just the deliverance services that were manipulated, it was everything that followed. They made sure that once someone was delivered, they became increasingly dependent on the church for continued protection. After the deliverance, they always talk about you staying faithful to the church so that the devil will not return to harm you. If you leave the church, if you stop giving, if you stop praying, you will open yourself up to attack once again, always after every deliverance. This was when the manipulation became fully apparent to me. They had designed the system to ensure that fear and spiritual oppression were never fully eradicated. Instead, they became a tool, a constant reminder that the only way to protect oneself from the enemy was to remain loyal to the church, to the ministry, and most importantly, to the senior pastors. He told me that I must have in my mind that the people will give anything to protect themselves from the unseen forces. They'll give their money, their time, their energy, because they will believe that if they don't, the demons will attack them again. It wasn't enough for them to give once. They had to keep giving, keep praying, keep attending deliverance services to maintain their protection. The system in these churches is that they make it sound and become normal that their financial contributions were a form of spiritual armor. Give to God, and He will protect you from the attacks of the enemy. Which is not biblical. It is something it was adopted into the faith for personal gains, where they use scriptures to back them. But even those scriptures are interpreted in a way it will serve them, and not its true meaning to those scriptures. My brother, where I used to serve, it was even worse. The congregation would empty their wallets time and again, believing that every penny was a bullet in their spiritual defense. And the more they gave, the more they were told they were safe, that God's favor was upon them. But if they stopped giving, even for a week or two, they were told that they were opening themselves up to attack again. As time went on, I saw how the fear of spiritual warfare began to consume the congregation. It wasn't just about occasional deliverances, it became a lifestyle. They lived in constant dread, constantly wondering if they were doing enough to protect themselves from the attacks of the enemy. The fear permeated everything, their relationships, their work, even their health. People stopped trusting in their own strength, their own wisdom. They became completely reliant on the church and the pastor's protection. I watched as families, once vibrant and full of hope, became hollowed out by fear. They were broken, not by demons, but by the lies they had been fed. They believed they were under constant spiritual attack, and in doing so, they gave everything they had to the church, hoping it would keep them safe. They stopped thinking for themselves, stopped seeking healing from other sources, and began to trust only the senior pastor and his teachings. By the time I realized the depth of the manipulation, it was already too late for many. The congregation had been trained to believe that fear of spiritual warfare was not only real, it was their reality. And by instilling that fear, the senior pastor had created a system of control that couldn't easily be undone. People were spiritually shackled, believing that only the church could protect them from forces they couldn't see or fully understand. It was a brilliant, insidious system. By making people afraid of the unseen, the senior pastor kept them coming back, kept them paying, kept them praying, never fully allowing them to experience true spiritual peace or freedom. As I looked around at the broken people, I realized that this was not the path I had imagined when I first entered the ministry. I wasn't leading people to freedom, I was leading them into deeper bondage. I can tell you that, as I speak with you now, I know of all the tricks and strategies most pastors use. Especially these big churches that seem to be doing things smooth without any form negativity. It is same as what you understand in the outside world of business and branding. When you brand yourself in a certain way, people automatically are drawn to you. The whole thing, my brother, is a calculated attempt of a system for the members to trust us, give us more money, hoping that we would break the chains of the enemy and daily problem around them. But in reality, they were just feeding into a system designed to take everything from them. The fear kept them bound. It kept them coming back. I realized that it wasn't just about faith, it was about control. People believed they were being protected from forces they didn't fully understand, and that protection came at a price. My brother, like I said, fake miracles and prophecies were all taught to us, the young pastor who were being groomed. Pastors are being taught how to manufacture miracles and prophecies. At first, I was shocked. We would set up situations where people who were supposedly sick or broken would suddenly receive healing during a service. The pastor would pray over them, and afterward, they would testify that they had been healed. It was all orchestrated. Sometimes too, we'd plant stories of people who had been miraculously healed from diseases, and when the time was right, we'd share those testimonies in the congregation. All these things were not about God and His will. It was about keeping up the illusion that our ministry was the only path to true salvation. And it worked. People would come from miles away, hoping that they, too, would experience the miracles they had heard about. And then there were the prophecies. The senior pastor would tell me, a prophecy must always come true, but you can make sure of it. Be vague, be subtle, and when the time comes, it will look like you were right all along. He taught me how to craft prophecies that felt personal, yet were broad enough to fit anyone's situation. Something like when a pastor tells you that, God says, you are about to receive a breakthrough. This kind of prophecy is so general that anyone could fit it into their own life. But they believed. They believed because we had already set the stage. And with every miracle and prophecy, the people gave more, hoping for their own divine moment. The last thing I want to touch on here before I move to the dark rituals we did is that there was this other thing of creating false visions of prosperity. This is what others call the doctrine of prosperity. We were taught that wealth was a sign of God's favor. If they are not wealthy, they are not truly following God. It was a dangerous teaching. The rich were praised, their testimonies celebrated, while the poor were made to feel ashamed, as if their poverty was a direct reflection of their faith. We began pushing the message that if you gave more, God would give you more. I remember how the senior pastor would emphasize the need to give large sums of money. The more you give, the more you receive. It was a game of appearances. Those who gave the most were celebrated, and those who didn't were made to feel like failures. The church began to resemble more of a business than a place of worship. It was no longer about the salvation of souls, it was about wealth accumulation and maintaining the illusion of prosperity. Those who couldn't keep up were left behind, made to feel inadequate in the eyes of their peers. My brother, I want to just touch on the rituals also. I don't want my conversation to be so long. You see, the most terrifying part of my time in that church, however, was the rituals, the dark rites that bound us to powers beyond this world. These rituals were not spoken of in public. They were secret, whispered only behind closed doors. I was made to understand and come to the knowledge that, in order to fully understand the power of the ministry, I had to be initiated into these rites. I will never forget the first time I participated. It was a night shrouded in darkness, a sense of dread hanging thick in the air. The rituals were performed in secret places, away from the eyes of the congregation. We invoked dark forces, made pledges to entities beyond our understanding, and bound ourselves spiritually to the senior pastor's power. The rituals were designed to ensure that we, as leaders, could never be overpowered in the spiritual realm. The church, under our leadership, would always stay protected, always stay dominant. But then, as I went deeper into these rites, I felt a darkness seep into my soul. I felt the weight of the rituals binding me in ways I didn't understand. I realized that this power came at a cost, and that cost was my very soul. That was when I took a decision to leave this ministry, and stay in my lonely world where I will reflect on the evil things I have been a part of and see if my Maker will forgive me and take me back into His loving hand. I want to use this opportunity to tell everyone who might listen to this that, you who may have already felt the sting of spiritual abuse, I want to remind you, you are not alone. You are loved by God, and His grace is sufficient for you. There is healing in His presence, and He will restore what has been taken from you. Seek His forgiveness, seek His guidance, and never forget that God's plan for you is far greater than any man-made system of control. Above all, never stop seeking the truth. The truth will set you free from lies, free from manipulation, and free from bondage. Stay anchored in the love and light of Christ. Let Him be your guide, your provider, your protector, and your comforter. Do not let any spiritual leader, no matter their title, draw you away from the true path of righteousness. I urge you, my brothers and sisters, to stand firm. The church is meant to be a place of healing, not harm. It is meant to be a refuge, not a prison. Walk in faith, trust in God's timing, and know that He will always lead you to greener pastures. Your worth is not found in the sacrifices you make to any human leader, it is found in the love and grace of our Heavenly Father. Stay free. Stay faithful. Stay true to the path of Christ with love and concern.
Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload. All I will say is that, stay grounded, stay prayerful, and stay vigilant. I hope this message encourages you to be discerning in your journey in life. Thank you for watching, and remember, life is too short to make choices you regret forever. We shall meet again in the next video.